Hello, I'm Jason with BigSharkTackle.com, and welcome to Bait Deployment 202. This is the second in a series of 2 videos about how to deploy your baits when you're land-based shark fishing. And on this video, we're going to deal with some more advanced techniques on how to deploy your baits when the conditions are less than ideal. When we have a lot of weed in the water, sometimes it's really hard to get your baits to stay put, and it's hard to get them out there, and the weed tends to wash them left and right and everywhere but where you want them to be. And we're going to deal with that, and also when the conditions are really rough and it's hard to paddle out through the surf zone, some ideas on how you might deal with that and hopefully salvage a trip that might be lost otherwise. Okay, let's start talking about weeds. Sometimes when you go out fishing, you get there and there is just so many weeds out there in the water that you can't hardly swim through it, much less get a line out there and get it to stay. So in some situations, it's hopeless. You just got to pack up and go home. But there are some situations where you got a lot of weed, but you can, with a little work, you can make it work. So the best thing to do, if you've got weed out there and you want to give it a go, first thing you need to remember is you need to get your bait out directly into the waves. You don't want the waves pushing sideways on your line, because when you get a little weed on it, then it'll be pushing it and pulling it off course and down the beach. So if you can get it directly into the waves will bring the weed up the line, and a lot of times it'll gather right at where the line leaves the water, and eventually it'll pile up there enough and you can just go pull some of it off every once in a while and free your line up, and then a little later it'll do it again. But you can make it work that way. It takes a little more work than you probably like to put forth, but it's better than having to give up and go home. So that's one way of dealing with it. If you can get it just right and the wind is coming inshore just like the waves are, roughly the same angle, then on a really good day you can get the wind to take over after the waves bring it to the surface. Then the wind will keep blowing it up the line all the way up to the rod. And then you don't have to wait out in the water to go clean off the line. You just pull it off your line every once in a while there at the rod. That's the ideal scenario. It doesn't always work out that way, but if you get lucky, you can make that work. So that's really the only way I know of to deal with weed, other than to just throw your stuff in your kayak and go fishing offshore and don't worry about a big long line going all the way to the shore collecting weed the whole time. Hopefully that'll work for you, and sometimes it just doesn't work. You just got to wait till the wind shifts and takes the weed offshore. It's amazing what a wind shift can do. We've been on several day trips where 1 or 2 days the weed is just horrible, and then the wind shifts, go another direction, and then there's no weed at all. So don't give up hope altogether if you're on a several day trip. The wind can make a huge difference. Okay, let's talk about when the conditions are really rough and you're having a hard time getting through the surf zone and you really want to get that bait out there, but you just can't quite make it. Got a few little techniques that we've figured out through experience on what might make the little difference on getting through the surf zone. The first one, this is really a desperation move, but if you get to where you just can't quite get it out, you need just a little less drag. What I've done, and sometimes with success, sometimes not, is to take my rod and reel with me. I'll strap it down to the side of the kayak, and real good. I won't put it in the rod holder, because if you flip with it in the rod holder, it'll probably break your rod. So I'll strap it along the side, carry my bait and everything out there with me, and that way I don't have the drag of the line pulling behind me, which can make a difference if you're just close on almost being able to make it. That might make the difference that you can get it out over through the surf zone. Take it all out there, drop it off, and then set my drag really light, just enough that it's almost like free spool, and then come back in, letting it drag the line as I go. The downside of this technique is it's not real good for your rod, especially in your reel, especially. You tend to get sand and stuff like that in it. So it's like I said, it's a desperation move. If you've planned a big trip and it's that or don't fish, then it's worth a try. You might need to do a little reel rebuilding when you get home, though. The other option, and this is something that a good technique to learn, is timing your waves. surfers, when they surf, they know that waves come in sets of 2 or 3 or 4 big waves, and then you've got a little lull before a next set of bigger waves comes in. And if you're trying to go through that surf zone and you're not paying attention to your waves, you can be just pounding, hitting those big waves and not realize you didn't have to work quite as hard if you did your timing just right. So what I'll do is I'll edge up if it's a really rough day, and I don't know if I can make it or not. I'll edge up right to the edge of the bar where the waves are already breaking and they're coming in, but they're not so rough that I can't maintain my position. And I'll watch for a second or two until I see several that hit me, that crest right in front of me. They're big, because you notice a wave will continue for a long ways to the left and right. And you notice it's only breaking real heavy in one spot. Over here, a little to your left, it might not be breaking while it's breaking right in front of you. And the same thing on the right. Well, if you wait till they get done breaking right in front of you, 2 or 3 come in, direct hits where you are, and then you'll observe that to your left and right, they're breaking over there, but there's a little lull right in front of you, and that's when you make a break for it. In this video here that I'm showing you, I'm doing that very thing. I'm easing up to just behind the bar where the waves are just after they break, and they're coming in, and then if you'll observe, they disappear. They're gone. It's not that I paddle forward, it's just that I hit that lull, and off to my left there are waves breaking, and off to my right, they're right in front of me, they aren't. And so I paddle real hard and I scoot through there before I get hit by the next set that comes through. And it's interesting because sometimes you can have a really rough day, and it doesn't look like you can get through, but if you time it just right, sometimes you can get through without even getting hit by a single wave that's breaking. But it just takes a little practice and a little timing, a little luck, and you can make it happen sometimes when it doesn't look like it could happen. Now, one other thing to remember on that, it does take some time. And so if it's a really windy day that you're having to fight the wind to stay in position, that can mess you up on that. Also, if you've got a lot of left to right current, wanting to carry you left or right, then if you stop to time your waves, then it's carried you off course before you can get going. So sometimes the conditions don't allow that, but if you do have a day where you've got heavy surf with maybe not a high wind at the moment, or the current's not real bad, then you can make that work for you with a little practice. So something to keep an eye out for and something to try, and it can make a huge difference sometimes, and make the difference between fishing and sitting on the beach doing nothing.